there, Ramblers, and welcome back to the approximately 30 minutes of rambling nonsense that is Reese Rambles, the podcast. I'm not quite sure why I did that intro completely differently, but let's go with it. Maybe it's because it's Christmas and my mind is on other things, or maybe it's because it's Friday the 13th and this whole thing's going to go horribly wrong. I guess that remains to be seen, but I hope you're all doing very well. Of course, yet again, it is very cold and wet and miserable here in the UK, but that's pretty much the way it goes this time of year. That's Christmas in Britain. And there is something that I forgot to talk about in last week's Ramble. I have no idea how I managed to overlook this. This is going to sound like an advert. It is not. I don't get kickbacks for this. I don't get paid anything for this. I'm just really, really proud. And that is the Atari Addict magazine from Addict Media. As you can see, it did go to print. That was what I was going to talk about. They were trying to get a certain number of orders in, pre-orders. The whole thing was ready to go. It was all laid out and kind of designed and written and ready. But they're a very, very small operation over at Addict Media, and they just needed a little bit of money to help push the thing over the line. Of course, they also do Pixel Addict magazine and Amiga Addict, which you've probably seen on the shelves in WH Smith here in the UK. And they did Amstrad Addict, which was a one-off thing very similar to this. But I wrote a couple of articles for this, and one of them is quite substantial. So if you go to page 36, 9 things to do with an Atari STE. And look at this. It's there's a 2-page spread, then there's another 2-page spread, and then there's a 5th page. And of course, the Atari STE being the enhanced version of the ST, I guess doesn't really get talked about enough, and it's kind of a bit mysterious, even kind of among a lot of ST owners, I guess, as well. And it was, of course, criminally underutilised. That is something I do kind of want to cover on the channel in the future as well, something specifically about the STE. So it's the machine I had as a kid, so really pleased to kind of be able to sing its praises and talk about what makes it so special. And it's good to finally get that out there. And there is another article that I wrote about the Atari Panther, which was the cancelled console that Atari were going to release in 1991. It's going to kind of be the predecessor to the Jaguar, I guess. There's a really fascinating story behind that and its development and why that ended up getting cancelled. And of course, there's a load of other articles and interviews with people in the industry and stuff like that. There's an interview with a guy called Nolan Bush something. Bushnell? Yeah, not quite sure who that is. Apparently, he's quite important in the Atari world. Yeah, I know, he's the founder of Atari. You can stop writing your comments now. Anyway, let's get on with the first story. And indeed, that story does fit into the same category. Once again, it's very much in the same ballpark. It's almost as if I planned this way, but you know me better than that. It's something that was mentioned last week, and it is related to the Atari STE, which is all very convenient. So what is this about? This is Faster. This is the 50 FPS Racer, as it was formerly known. It's a racing game for the Atari STE, brand new, built from the ground up by Jonathan Thomas, who was previously known for some of his STE adaptations of some older games, like Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge, I think he did, a couple of other racing games and some other bits and bobs. And this is his kind of racer that he has built from the ground up using those skills. Runs at a rock solid 50 FPS on the Atari STE. It uses the enhanced colour palette of the STE, it uses the DSP sound, and it uses the blitter. All to fantastic effect. And the story last week was that this was going to be demoed and officially unveiled and released. Obviously, it's been showing updates and things as it's been under development, but officially actually unveiled and demoed and released at a big demo party called Silly Venture. Well, I say demo party, it's kind of a big kind of Atari party. That happened last week, as reported. And a couple of interesting developments from that. So the first one is that you can actually download the game now from itch.io, which had been announced, but it does have an official page now with a link and everything. And of course, I will link to that down in the description in the usual places. It's retroracing.itch.io/faster-atari-STE. But you don't have to type all of that in. Like I say, I will link to it. But yeah, so the page says, this is Faster, a brand new, super fast and silky smooth 2.5D racing game built from the ground up for the Atari STE, using modern tools, techniques and knowledge. First place in the Silly Venture 2024 WE Atari STE Games Competition. So there you go, demoed at Silly Venture, and he won first place for it. Quite deservedly so, I would say. I'm not quite sure what the other entries were, but yeah, I wouldn't want to be up against this because it is a massive technical achievement. So we've got a list of bullet points here. 50 frames per second racing action on an 8 megahertz Atari STE, so it runs on a completely stock standard system. 15 plus large full colour sprites on screen drawn by the blitter. So that's very impressive. 15 full colour sprites on screen at the same time. 30 plus colours on screen from the enhanced STE palette. It's got a full 24-hour day and night cycle, simultaneous digital engine noise, sound effects, and YM soundtrack. And I will link to the video so you can go and check out what that sounds like. Screen shaking effect, courtesy of the STE's hardware scrolling. That's another thing that I neglected to mention. Of course, the STE also has hardware scrolling as well. Very much, hardware-wise, very much on par with the Amiga, I would say, the STE was. It's just, unfortunately, as always with Atari, it was too little too late. But there we go. It says, don't expect endless game modes, achievements, tutorials, or cutscenes. This is pure, unfettered, and uncomplicated 1980s style arcade action. So, yeah, if you're a fan of, Outrun and that kind of stuff, the Lotus games, this will be very much up your street. It says the game is freely distributable. I don't ask for any money. The most important thing to me is that people enjoy the game and spread the word. Following my socials is great, but if you can post playthroughs or reviews of the game on Twitter, YouTube, community forums, etc., that would be particularly appreciated. So it's got the specs, the system requirements here. You need an Atari STE. It's not compatible with the STFM, even if you do have a blitter installed. You can install a blitter in an STFM, or if you have the Mega ST, that's essentially an STFM with a blitter. Not compatible with that, of course, because it needs the DSP chip and the enhanced graphics stuff, the hardware scrolling. You need 1 megabyte of RAM, but of course the STE uses SIMs for the RAM, and most of them have been upgraded by this point anyway. I don't think there were that many half meg STEs sold in the first place, although that is the one that we had. It runs on standard genuine Atari TOS or MU TOS. If you have TOS 2.x, then you need 2 megabytes of RAM, just because of the extra overhead, of course, of that more advanced version of TOS. Just a floppy drive or equivalent, e.g. Gotek, and a joystick in port 1. Not compatible with the Falcon, but might be in a future version. Unlikely ever to be compatible with the TT, but does anyone actually have a TT? And if they do they play games on it? I wouldn't have thought so. Of course, as this was developed as a 50 FPS thing, it is primarily targeted at UK and European systems with PAL 50 Hz. And it hasn't been extensively tested on US 60 Hz systems. So that'll be interesting to see. Although, as far as I know, I think as far as my understanding of the ST goes, the refresh rate of the screen and stuff isn't kind of bound by hardware. It can actually be kind of determined by software, by the OS. I think. Someone's probably going to call me a liar in the comments, but there you go. So that is Faster. Very cool to see. Very well deserved that it did win that first place at Silly Venture, and it's looking fantastic. I know I mentioned last week that I wanted, I was going to try and get a chance to play this over the course of the week and give my impressions and my thoughts on it. I haven't had a chance to do that. In all honesty, my very limited gaming time this week has been taken up playing Stalker 2. As you might expect, and it's bloody good. Despite all the bugs and things that people are talking about, it is an excellent game, and it's going to get even better as they fix all that stuff. But that's kind of off topic for this story. Headline here is that Faster is now available to download and run on your STE, or indeed your favourite Atari emulator, Atari STE emulator, and it's looking great. It's won an award. It's fully free. Go and give Jonathan a follow on social media, because now he's finished this project, I can't wait to see what he does next. And while we are on the subject of itch.io, I should probably talk about a bit of drama that's happened this week regarding that site. As previously mentioned, of course, it's kind of the go-to destination for indie and homebrew game publishers. We used it for the Jag Jam, Atari Jaguar Game Jam competition that we did this year, which very nicely wrapped up at the end of October. All the judging and stuff has been done for that. Hoping to do an update video on that, by the way. But let's not get too sidetracked. The story here is about itch.io. And I actually saw this unfold in real time. So I woke up on Sunday morning and checked the socials, as you do. Started my my daily 12 hours of doom scrolling, and saw a post from one of the people behind itch.io saying that the website was offline and it had been taken down by Funko. Yeah, the people that make the Funko Pops. So I don't have that initial post available in front of me, but I do have some stuff to show you. So there's a tweet here from Funko. basically apologizing for this. The story is essentially that they use, this is Brand Shield. They use a service called Brand Shield, and it's it's an AI, I say that in air quotes, AI powered, like digital rights enforcement, copyright enforcement thing. And what it does is it trawls the internet for potential copyright infringements, and it sends out takedown notices, automated takedown notices to people who are supposedly infringing upon their clients' copyright. And what had basically happened is someone had published a Funko Pop related game on itch.io. It hadn't been up for very long, and Brand Shield's automatic crawling had found it and sent a takedown notice to itch.io's domain registrar, their hosting company, who then took the website down, the entire website. So rather than sending it to the owners of the site and say, oh, this specific page on your site is infringing on our client's copyright, they went straight to the top and said, this entire site is fraudulent, it's copyright infringing, take the site down. And of course, they complied with that request. And I'm not sure if at any point during that process, a human was involved, which is absolutely insane to me. And the website, it ended up being down for quite a long time. I think it was pretty much the entire day. So not good. They've posted, Brand Shield have posted something on Twitter, basically not apologising, but just explaining. And of course, it's got community notes and what do you call these things? And community notes? I don't know. Readers added context that thought people might know. Just explaining all of this. And basically, rather than filing it as a DMCA copyright request, they filed it as phishing and fraud. Which, of course, is a very serious allegation, and of course, caused the registrar to act very quickly in taking the website down. And like I say, the whole thing was just automated. But there's more to this story. This just gets crazier and crazier. So, Funko have also posted a statement. It's not an apology. It's just a statement and an explanation of what's happened. So at Funko, we hold a deep respect and appreciation for indie games, indie gamers, and indie developers. We're fans of fans, and we love the creativity and passion that define the indie gaming community. Recently, one of our brand protection partners identified a page on itch.io imitating the Funko Fusion development website. A takedown request was issued to address this specific page. Funko did not request a takedown of the itch.io platform, and we're happy the site was back up by this morning. We've reached out to itch.io to engage with them on this issue, and we deeply appreciate the understanding of the gaming community as the details are determined. Thank you for sharing in our passion for creativity. So no apology there. And then, of course, there's a community note attached to this. Takedown request in question was fraud and phishing report to the registrar instead of the more usual DMCA request, which obviously, of course, I already mentioned. And as you can see in the replies, the usual Twitter stuff, the usual blue tick people with their incredible insights. And it's madness. The whole thing's a complete mess. But wait, there is more. So apparently during all this tweet from itch.io. This is not a joke. Funko just called my mum. And this is... mom, I guess. But this is a message from presumably the person that runs the itch.io website, forwarded on from their mother. Got a strange call from a company about accusatory statements on your social media account. Call me. Now, I don't think it has actually been determined as to whether this was a call from Funko or from Brand Shield, or if it was just some troll who somehow managed to, maybe look at the whois, the domain registrar details, and get this person's mum's number. But it's still up, so I guess it did actually happen. Somebody contacted her regarding these statements that they were making, these accusations online about the website being taken down by Funko. So the whole situation is just insane, and it's just kind of, the modern day internet takedown requests and AI powered stuff and humans not being involved and kind of making reasonable, rational decisions in these situations. I think we're going to be seeing a hell of a lot more of this online, unfortunately. Of course, we've quite recently seen YouTube channels being taken down for absolutely no reason whatsoever, frivolous reports that with no basis in reality, and this is just the latest. But it's just, it's big news because it's kind of the world's biggest Indian Indian kind of homebrew gaming hosting website being taken down by the people that make those silly plastic landfill fodder things, and as a result of an AI powered process. So if that doesn't sum up the internet today, I don't know what does. Anyway, let's move on from that madness. And last week I talked about the MiSTer MultiSystem from Heber. Disclaimer again, of course, I am friendly with Richard, who owns Heber, and all of that lot down at the Retro Collective. I do feel like I should be upfront about that when I'm talking about their products. But yeah, I am excited about this because I love the original MiSTer MultiSystem. I use it for all of my retro gaming. It's of course it runs on the MiSTer platform, so it uses the FPGA to run all of those cores for all of those older computers and consoles and things. As we all know, I don't need to explain this in great detail every week, but last week they announced that they were working on the MultiSystem 2. Now, the MultiSystem 2 is quite interesting because the board is kind of an all-in-one solution. It has the actual FPGA chip built into the board, so you don't need to buy the DE10 Nano to slot into the top of it to get all that MiSTer functionality like the original multi-system, and indeed like a lot of those other kind of consoleized MiSTer setups, all those wonderful things, different kind of stacks and ITX-based things are all out there. And of course, I also should mention that Taki Udon is working on his own consoleized version of the MiSTer 2. So very, very exciting times to be getting into the world of MiSTer and FPGA gaming, I must say. But some more details have emerged of the MultiSystem 2, and it's all looking very cool, as you might expect from a kind of a proper product, a proper design and manufacturing company like Heber. It's all coming together quite quickly, and it's all been packaged up very nicely, just like the original. So I'm very, very interested in this. And they've basically, so the pictures before were kind of some very vague pictures of the empty PCB, the blank PCB straight from the kind of the fabricators, hadn't been populated with components, and then, they were kind of very vague pictures. I think quite deliberately, of course, because it was a bit of a teaser to get people excited. So we now have pictures of the fully assembled board. And as we can see, it has a full-size SD card slot on it, so no micro SD this time. Of course, you can use a micro SD card in it because they all tend to come with the full-size adapters anyway, and if you buy one and it doesn't, who doesn't have a drawer full of these things at this point? So I really like that. Full-size SD cards are just substantial. They're just nicer to handle, I think. Of course, it's got the expansion slot from the original multi-system, and it also has some other expansion options on it, which I don't think have been publicly talked about yet, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, these other kind of slots and things for add-ons, I guess. So that is that. So we've got some close-ups of the kind of the switches and the buttons and stuff. They've all got headers attached to them, so you can wire those up to, if you want to put it in a case and wire those up to other kind of external buttons, you can do that. So that's interesting. And it's just a really nice looking thing, a really nice package. And one thing that I think the first thing that kind of stood out to me, in fact, no, we'll quickly talk about the ports on the back first, I think, because I'm sat here looking at these. Of course, the original MiSTer MultiSystem had a SCART connector on it, which is all well and good. I bought it thinking, I'm going to use this with my CRTs and stuff all the time. And I think I've used the SCART connector maybe twice. I just use it on HDMI. But as you can see, if you are watching this on YouTube, it has what I believe to be, I don't think it's been announced, but it looks like it's the RGB connector that they use on all of these mods and things. I think it's from the Genesis, not the Mega Drive, the Master System 2. It's from a Sega system, a Sega Saturn thing, I think. It's something that you can very easily get cables for. Apologies for not knowing that off the top of my head. But it's got SPDIF audio, it's got 3.5mm, as you might expect. It's got the VGA port, which is with a switch next to it, which I assume is the Sync on Green thing that the original had. Network port, USB on the front and the back, and it uses a barrel jack for power. And I have seen some debate about the power situation and how they might be better off using USB-C PD, which I must admit, I think I would prefer. As you may know, I've been doing some testing with the OSSC Pro. In fact, I've got it right here on the desk next to me, oddly enough. I've been using it for some stuff this week. And that uses the same power supply as the original MiSTer MultiSystem. And I've got the multi-system at home, but I've got the OSSC Pro here at the studio. And whenever I borrow the power supply to use on this, I always forget to take it home. And then I go to play on my MiSTer, and I can't because I've not got a power supply for it. But if it was USB-C, we wouldn't have that problem, would we? So I will say, if there are going to be some future revisions of this, USB-C might be nice, perhaps in addition to that, or perhaps some kind of dongle or adapter or something. I don't know. Just something to think about, Richard. I know you're listening. And they've also unveiled the case design for it this week. Now, this looks this, it's a thing. It's a whole look, isn't it? I mean, I only spotted this. They've got a comparison here with it next to the original multi-system. I spotted this earlier today, and I've looked at it a few times, and it's certainly very distinctive, isn't it? I'm still not quite sure what to make of it. I don't want to sit here and say yes, it looks amazing, because I don't think I'm fully sold on it. But it is very distinctive, and it does fit that very distinctive PCB design. You know, it's got these angles on the front. In fact, when I first saw this from this angle and saw the front of the board, my first thought was actually Atari Jaguar. If you've ever taken an Atari Jaguar apart, the board itself is actually kind of angled at the front in a very similar way to this. So maybe they've taken some inspiration from that. I don't know. But yeah, you know, maybe if it was like a Jag-shaped case, that would help to sell it to me a lot more. But you know, it's very distinctive, much like the original. And, you know, it looks like it has this whole kind of design language that's going to come along with it. There has been some debate about maybe having a version with a nice kind of flush flat top without this cartridge slot, which I think would go a long way to making it kind of looking a bit more, make it look a bit more kind of sleek and, you know, polished and all of that. But, of course, they are experts in 3D printing. Richard literally wrote the book on 3D printing, as we know, 3D printing for dummies. And it's going to be very high quality and very well designed and made. There is absolutely no doubt about that. So really cool to see the whole project unfolding in front of our eyes, and it's all coming together very, very quickly. In all honesty, I don't think I'll be buying one of these. I have the original multi-system. This doesn't really do anything over and above that I've seen yet. There's no real compelling reason. It's going to run all the same MiSTer cores and stuff. It's running the same FPGA chip internally. But yeah, you know, very kind of interesting option for anyone wanting to get into the world of MiSTer. Of course, no pricing announced as yet, but I imagine as an all-in-one solution, it's going to be cheaper than buying something else and buying the DE10 and combining the two. I guess, I'm not sure 100% on that. Of course, we have the Tachyon DE10 clone available now as well, which is much lower cost than the original, but definitely going to be keeping up with this project and talking about updates and that in the future. And you never know, maybe I'll get my hands on one at some point and get to have a play with it. So, an update on the Doom64 port to the Dreamcast this week. It's a project I've talked about in the past a few times. It's something I'm quite excited about. As you probably know, if you're a regular here, I am a huge fan of all things Doom, and Doom64 came into my life quite a bit later on, thanks to the Night Dive remaster on the PC that came out a few years ago. But I've been following this with a lot of interest because this is actually a really cool thing. So, this is over on Twitter. Posted by Falco Gergis again, who seems to be the main sort of point of contact for this. And this is an actual hardware capture from the latest build of JN Martin's Doom64 port to the Dreamcast, of course, which has now become, apparently, by their own admission, the definitive, prettiest way to enjoy the title with dynamic lighting and bump mapping. And apparently there's a lot of new stuff to talk about. So, first game to use the brand new hybrid vertex submission mechanism that they've just added to Callisti OS. I have no idea what any of those things mean. I know some of those words, but go you. It was a long, cruel week to get all of the issues sorted out, but they have been, and it has further boosted the game's performance while under load, and is now something the rest of the Dreamcast community can utilise in their homebrew. So that's fantastic, pushing their homebrew development platform forwards. The scene in particular used to lag using traditional DMA-based vertex submission mechanism with all of the lights and its higher geometric complexity. But notice it's not even dropping a frame now. So yes, absolutely. They've posted a video here just to demo this in action, and it is silky smooth. We've got that lovely new lighting that they've added. And of course that bump mapping as well, which adds all those lovely textures, a nice 3D effect to all of the kind of existing textures and things, while still remaining very kind of authentic and you know, to the original game, which is always great to see. Yeah, it says, if there's any doubt as to whether the Dreamcast version is actually the definitive way to play the game, JN Martin now allows you to export the assets from the legally purchased Steam version and import them into the Dreamcast version, where you can enjoy the extra bonus levels and campaign with the new and improved graphics. So if you're familiar with the Night Dive remaster, there were some new and improved levels, and you can export those from the Steam version now and play them in this Dreamcast version, which is really cool. publicly available. There's a GitHub repo and, of course, build instructions and everything there, which I have linked to previously, and I will link to again in this ramble. So, around this time last year, I was getting very excited indeed about a game called The Talos Principle, specifically the sequel to that, which of course was going to be released and which I've had absolutely loads of fun with this year. They did release a DLC pack for that with 3 new episodes. I kind of tried to get stuck into those and they didn't really gel with me. The fact that they don't really kind of fit in all that coherently with the kind of the main story. I think it was the story that really sold it to me. Of course, the puzzles are awesome as well. If you're not familiar with the Talos Principle, it is a 3D first-person puzzle game, and it kind of dabbles in philosophy and religion and sociology and all that kind of other stuff as well. It feels like it's trying to make some kind of statement, and I quite like that in a game. But yeah, I played the original back in the day when it first came out, and it was relatively unknown. It was built on the Serious Sam engine by Crow Team, of course, who made that game, and it was just this fun little robot-based puzzle game thing. No idea that it was going to grow into something so big, and very much enjoyed the sequel quite a lot. Well, the story this week to do with the Talos Principle is that they have announced a very expanded and improved remaster of the game. It says more than a remaster on the official trailer that they've released here. So it's called the Talos Principle Reawakened, and if you haven't played the original game, it's kind of much smaller in scope than the sequel. Of course, it was kind of, if you think like Portal versus Portal 2, it's kind of, I think that's a very kind of apt comparison. And indeed, if you are a fan of the Portal games, I think you would enjoy the Talos Principle very much. It's very much that kind of puzzly, lateral thinking type of stuff. I always recommend it to anyone and everyone who will listen. This remastered version, I should say, includes a new chapter, which is called In the Beginning, which is like a prequel, which kind of sets up, the story behind the game. It includes the Road to Gehenna expansion, which was released later on as DLC, so that is now included. And I think perhaps most interestingly, most excitingly, the PC version includes a level editor, so you can finally officially design your own puzzles for the game, which is really cool. Something I'm definitely going to have a go at, I think, because yeah, it's just a fun time. Of course, the whole thing has been rebuilt using a brand new, using a different engine, which of course is the Unreal Engine 5, which the sequel Talos Principle 2 also used, and it just looks brilliant. Of course, Unreal Engine 5 is an amazing looking thing anyway. And they've taken the original levels, the original story, the original missions, packaged it up with that DLC, added the new chapter, added the level editor. It's a really nice package. Of course, it's not released yet. It has been announced that it will be out at some point in early 2025. But that is all looking very cool. So I don't think it's going to be, I mean, they haven't announced anything along these lines, but I don't think it's going to be just like a free upgrade to anyone who owns the original game. I wouldn't expect that from a smaller studio like Crow Team, to be honest. I know Valve have been dropping stuff on people left, right and centre, but they're Valve, they're enormous, they can afford it. Really genuinely don't mind paying for this with all the extra content and stuff. So I will be doing that. It's a shame it's not out now because Christmas, it tends to be a time when I have a lot of time, for gaming. But of course, I've got Stalker 2 to keep me busy at the moment, and Faster if and when I ever get around to it. But yeah, Talos Principle Reawakened does look very cool. It's coming in early 2025. Probably not the last you'll hear of it here, because I just love this series. So, surprisingly enough, another update this week on the RM800XL project. And no, that's not not an RM, not a Research Machines PC from the 80s and the 90s, if you're familiar with those old school PCs here in the UK. No, this is a project to recreate the Atari 800XL as an FPGA-based system. And the interesting thing about this is that it is in no way officially affiliated with Atari. And yet the whole project marches on. Now, I know they were contacted in an official capacity, in a legal capacity, and asked to put a stop to the project. I don't know if that was a full-blown cease and desist. I can't remember. It was a while ago. I should probably look it up. But yeah, a lot of people said at the time that would be the end of that and that they wouldn't be foolish enough to continue with it. But continue with it they did, and it's actually looking really cool. So they have tweeted some stuff out this week, and I thought I would show this to you. So it literally just says, of course, RM stands for Revive Machines. That's the name of the group that are kind of putting this thing together. I think they're both based in Poland, or I think it is Poland. I think it's Eastern Europe. It doesn't actually say. I'm sure it was Poland. Doesn't really matter. But literally, the post just says RM800XL, and they have some pictures of an external enclosure. So they've showed pictures of the board and stuff, and they've showed it running in the past. But now we have what it's actually going to look like externally. And this looks, is it injection molded? Is it 3D printed? It looks, if it is 3D printed, it's very, very high quality, which is cool. But I think it might be injection molded. But it's essentially a full-size, full-blown recreation of the Atari 800XL computer. Looks a little bit, I don't want to say rough around the edges, because that's very unfair. And like I say, it is very high quality. But, you know, the colours are off. I guess it's a prototype. But the back will look very familiar to anyone who knows those machines. It's got the SIO expansion connector on there, got the DIN monitor connector and the parallel edge connector on there. All compatible with the original machine, as of course. It has the power switch, which looks pretty much identical to the original. But of course, as we can see on here, it has some modern additions as well. So we've got USB-C for power. We've got a USB-A port on there, it looks like. I think that's what that is. Yep, those labelled USB. An SD card slot, of course, to put all of your games and things on. And an HDMI out for the video. So it's going to support HDMI out for video. It's going to support the original monitors as well, which is really cool to see. We've got a picture of the cartridge slot here, which is all nicely molded. Looks like, you know, again, very high quality looking stuff. We've got the keyboard, and I think the keycaps look blank at the moment, and they're in kind of a strange brown color. In fact, I think they do look 3D printed, don't they? 3D printing is getting so good nowadays, isn't it? But yeah, it's got the mouldings in the side for obviously the function buttons along the side and the LED and all of that stuff. It's a really nice, sort of faithful, accurate recreation of the Atari 800XL. So yeah, oh, there's a picture of the side as well. I should talk about that. So a picture of the side, of course, on the side of the original system, you had the two D9 joystick connectors, and this one has also sprouted to USB connectors for joysticks, of course. So yeah, this looks really good, and apparently it works, and apparently, you know, it's all kind of coming together and coming to completion and looking like a really nice, polished project. But I do fear for these guys because, of course, they have been asked to stop in the past, and they've continued, they've forged ahead with it, and you can't help but admire them. But are they actually going to be able to bring this thing to market? Are they, you know, kind of hoping that maybe they can turn around and sell the whole project to Atari to sell as an official thing? To be honest, with the way that Atari have been going just lately, there's a good chance that they might actually take it up and sell it. And to be honest, if they do, I think I'll buy one because it looks absolutely brilliant. So yeah, great project. Great to hear from the RM800XL people and see some more progress on that. And it's all looking very good. And that brings me around quite neatly to my regular video of the week feature, of course, wherein I highlight a video that I've seen in the past week on YouTube that has been educational or entertaining or whatever else, really interesting. You know the drill by now. And of course, quite often these are off topic. Sometimes they're wildly off topic, but hey, it's my podcast. I can recommend whatever I like. But this one this week is actually very much kind of in our wheelhouse, in our ballpark, if you like. So you may have seen this already. It's quite a big channel that you've probably heard of, but I thought this was quite an interesting video and just another sign of the horrible dystopian technological future that kind of faces us going into 2025. So this is a video on LGR Blurbs, of course, which is LGR, Clint from LGR's second channel. And of course, he went through that whole business earlier this year where the hurricane destroyed his house essentially, and it's been very good to see him get back up and running and start putting out videos again. And that also includes on his second channel, LGR Blurbs. So good to see that he's pumping out the main videos at a rate of knots, I must say, and very much up to the quality that we would expect from him. And that he's also got time to do some second channel stuff as well as sorting out all the house stuff that's going on in the background and sorting out his collection and everything that was kind of damaged by that. But this video talks about some of the so-called AI features that are starting to pop up in YouTube. Now, I've started to see these appear as well in YouTube Studio in the back end, and I'm not keen. So he goes through in typical Clint fashion, as you might expect. It's a very fun video. It's a good laugh, but it's also quite worrying as well because of the nature of the actual subject. And he starts off talking about the automated replies that we have to comments. So if you comment under a YouTube video, forever, I think this has been pretty much been a thing forever. I certainly, I think going back to even when I first started 5 years ago, they have some kind of canned responses. Very, very basic stuff like, thanks for the comment, and glad you enjoyed the video, and stuff like that. But what they're starting to add is obviously large LLM, large language model stuff into this, which looks at other comments that you may have posted in the past, or replies that you've posted in the past, and uses those as the basis for kind of suggested replies. And Clint goes through and looks at some of the absolutely insane things that this system comes out with as suggested replies to some of the comments on his videos. That's fun. A bit weird to see, and very impersonal. I mean, if you're going to go through and read your comments and respond to people, it seems like a very impersonal way to do it, doesn't it? It's just, I don't know. I don't like it. It doesn't quite sit right with me, and indeed, it doesn't quite sit right with Clint either. And he also goes through, and oddly enough, he only has this new feature on his LGR Birds channel. Now, if you've come across LGR Birds, it started off as him live streaming a bird feeder outside the back of his old house. And then the whole thing got more and more elaborate, and then of course that house ended up getting destroyed, and he ended up moving into his new temporary accommodation. And LGR Birds is now back, and he is now back to live streaming bird feeders outside his new property. But oddly enough, that tiny little channel that only has a few thousand subscribers has this new experimental feature that's popped up. And it's all AI powered again, and it starts off as kind of brainstorming ideas for new videos, that kind of thing. Obviously, they're all like bird watching based because of the obviously the topic of the channel, and it even generates thumbnails and things for these crazy video suggestions. But the most interesting thing that he finds, and I don't want to spoil the whole video, but even so, it's well worth going and watching. Even knowing what's going to happen, because of course it's Clint and it's worth watching for the presentation and his kind of humour alone. But the weird thing is you can actually type into the box, generate me a video in the style of, and then name a channel. So of course he uses his own channel, and even though it's completely unrelated to the bird watching and the bird streaming stuff, it comes up with suggestions for LGR videos. So you can completely rip off other people's style and other people's ideas. Of course, the suggestions are all, the vast majority of them are completely unhinged and unusable, as is the way with these large language model things. But it's only going to improve from here. And I guess if you have a YouTube channel, it's probably potentially maybe a bit useful just to kind of jog your brain for ideas and things, maybe. Personally, I already have a list of ideas as long as my arm anyway that I'm kind of hoping to get stuck into next year. But anyway, just a really interesting exploration of where they kind of want to take the platform. I don't like it. Clint doesn't seem to like it. I assume somebody out there must have asked for this, or maybe not. Maybe it's just let's shove AI into everything we possibly can, as is usually the case with these big tech companies. But interesting to see how these features work. Like I say, I kind of have some very kind of cut down versions of these available to me, but very interesting to see kind of the big full-blown version that's slowly being rolled out to some of these channels. So that's my video of the week. Again, another glimpse into our dystopian technical 2025 future, the second quarter of this century. I can't say I'm looking forward to it. And that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. I've made a list, I've checked it twice, and I have indeed, this time around, covered all of the stories that I was intending to cover. So hopefully next week we won't be starting with yet another, oh, by the way, here's something from last week that I completely forgot about, which I seem to keep doing just lately. I've got things on my mind. There's stuff going on in my life. There's stuff happening in the background. If you're a supporter of Control-Alt-Reese, there will be a video going out kind of explaining all of that and some big changes and stuff for 2025. All good stuff, but very big changes, very kind of disruptive. And of course, that will all be going out publicly as well in the near future, and can't wait to start talking about that. But that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble, so thank you ever so much for joining me. Of course, less than 2 weeks until Christmas Day now. It's getting on for 10 days until Christmas Day. So those of you out there who aren't ready for Christmas, I think you I think you're going to have a pretty hectic weekend ahead of you. But yeah, no major disasters for Friday the 13th, so that's good. Although I suppose the day isn't fully over just yet. I'm going to go home and have some food. It's 8 o'clock? Yeah, it's 8 o'clock in the evening. Have some food and have some wine like I like to do on a Friday night. And I will see all of you again in the same time and the same place next week for the next instalment of Reese Rambles. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful weekend. Bye!